50 degrees. You drive this a little bit more, I bet I get into about at speed down in the 40, 45 degrees. Hey, thanks for joining the channel, Scotchrot's HTX. Don't forget the HTX. Today I've got an interesting one for you. I'm going to install AC in my stepdaughter's YJ Jeep Air. It's been really hot here in Texas, and about time she gets some AC in her Jeep. She's also taking this Jeep up to Michigan, and it'd be nice for her to have AC in the summertime of Michigan as well. Anyway, this is technically her father's Jeep. He's on his way over here now, and we're going to complete the upgrade in my garage because it has AC in it, and we're going to do that together. We're going to be doing some other things too that we probably won't film. We'll have to take the radiator out to do the AC condenser, and we're going to replace that radiator with an upgraded unit because the stock radiators always fail and crack on the plastic ends. We'll do some brake stuff too, like replacing the calipers on on the front of the Jeep. And the only thing I'll mention about that, if you've got stock calipers on your YJ Jeep, replace the calipers. They have plastic pistons in the calipers themselves, and they swell over time and they start to stick. The replacement calipers have stainless steel pistons and rectify that problem. But today we're going to concentrate on the AC and just see how this goes. I hope this goes smoothly in one day. Okay. George is done. He's taken his door off, and we've removed part of the dash and the radio because there were some electrical outlets that he had put on an aftermarket underneath here. So we're ready to put in the evaporator part of the AC unit, which is this thing. This evaporator already comes slotted for holes here and here, another on this side, and this is on the driver's side. These holes are already in the underneath of the dash, right here, and then likewise on the other side. And we have self-tapping screws that are going to go up inside here where these screw holes are already there. Because even though this doesn't have AC, the holes are there underneath the dash as if there was a stock AC in this vehicle. Filming this is going to be tight, so we're probably just going to show you the end results when we get done, because there is another bracket that goes underneath here where the gas pedal is to keep the blower motor from hitting the gas pedal. We may have to do some trimming on the top of that gas pedal right there. The evaporator is in. I drilled 1 1/4 holes in the firewall here for our high and low pressure lines. The evaporator case with blower is in. I'm telling you right now, this is the standard case of the manufacturer over-promising and under-delivering, because their jig on these holes here, there's 4 holes and 4 screws that are pre-drilled from the manufacturer on the dashboard, and then they have slotted holes on the evaporator itself that they say simply align the holes and put the self-tapping screws in there. Those holes do not align up, not all 4 of them, and it is a bear to get it in there. And it took 20 minutes just to get 4 screws in for this evaporator. So, and it was nothing more than their holes don't align up with the manufacturer's holes underneath the dash. The other issue is what I would do, and this is a Scott tip for you. I'm going to go around the other side, so hold on a sec. The kit calls for you maybe having to cut down the throttle bracket right here where my finger is, because this extends up here because this blower motor can hit it. I'm telling you right now, just go ahead and cut it down, because if you install, and the way their instructions are written, they say install this evaporator and then cut this bracket down if you need to. Don't do that. Just cut down the daggone bracket, because if you do have to cut down that bracket, this evaporator and this blower motor right there is in your way and it's more difficult. So just go ahead and cut it down anyway. Also, getting that bracket in right there, that holds up the evaporator and the blower box out of the way of the throttle body bracket, or the throttle pedal bracket. Well, That is a bear, and I know that took quite some time to get that all screwed in. But it is in. But don't be fooled. This is your classic case of, you know, it fits with a large hammer. And one other thing I did, I drilled, well, they call for a 5/8 hole right around this area for the drain tube. I actually used a 1/2 inch and just kind of squeezed it through. It was just a little bit of a tighter fit. And I actually, what worked out really well is I did it right around this seam sealer right here, which acts as a little bit of a sponge to prevent some chafing on this hose. That actually worked out pretty well. Jumping ahead to the condenser, the dryer, compressor, and running the hoses, you're going to see that we've already removed the radiator and the shroud and the belt. That was just simple removing processes of draining the radiator and removing all those items. But I'm going to go through the other stuff one by one and some of the tips I'll have for you. First thing I'm going to do is disconnect you from my stand. First of all, this compressor, this bracketry right here that goes into the kind of a pot metal bracketry that goes into the engine that holds the alternator and everything. It's held down on this black bracket. It has 4 bolts on either side of it, 2 on either side, basically. And similarly, there are 4 bolts on the condenser. Right here, 1 down there, 2 over there as well. And they look very, very similar. But they have different thread pitches. And make sure you get the right bolts into the right bracketry that holds the condenser or holds the compressor, because you can cross thread one of the two. Now, on the condenser itself, things weren't really as simple as what the instructions said, and I'll tell you why. First of all, I'm going to go over how to put in the U-bolts that go into right here, right now. To put these, and I don't know if I'm showing that right, there we go, I hope that focuses a little bit. To fit these U-bolts over top this core support, I'm going to have to grind this flat so this U-bolt can go over it. On that side, this side, and that side over there. I was saying, I cut this back a bit with the grinder, and these U-bolts right here go into that hole nice and snug on both sides. Just had to cut it back a bit. Now that that's explained, there's a little bit of fiddling going on when putting in this condenser. For one thing, the bracketry from this side to that side over there was not long enough to fit into the U-bolts that we installed on the core support. To add insult to injury, the bolt holes over on this side were not large enough to accommodate the bolt supplied by the company. So we had to wallow out or make those holes bigger in order for this bracketry to work and install this condenser. Another item I would be wary of when putting in the system, and that is the dryer. When putting in these hoses, now you see we have run all these hoses. We got a hose running from the dryer to the condenser, and the condenser to the compressor, and the whole works basically as instructions, as you would do for a normal AC. But what I would do, the instructions call for installing this dryer and then running the hoses. I wouldn't do that. I'd actually run the hoses and then install this dryer, because you need to make sure you have enough room for this hose right here that runs all the way down and into the evaporator inside the compartment, the passenger compartment. If you don't, you can run into what we did, and you can see we missed a mark. We had installed here, it was a couple inches short. We had to move over the dryer to make that fit. But it's all in there, and now we're just going to move on to the next steps, putting it back together. One other tip for you on installing these O-rings when you're putting these hoses together, the instructions say you don't need any lubrication around these O-rings, and quite honestly, I'm just going to disagree. I always put a little bit of lubrication over the top of these O-rings when I'm putting these fittings together. It just kind of cuts down on tearing the O-rings when you're making this installation, and especially on this kit. I want to say you're forcing it, but you are doing a little bit of coercion to get the female and male parts to connect together properly before you can start threading in the nut onto the female part of the evaporator or the compressor or the condenser or something like that. And that little bit of lubrication gives me a little bit of insurance that I'm not tearing those O-rings and causing a leak. It's just my point of view. So everything's installed. We got the evaporator inside there. Radiators put back on, all the hoses, all the belts are all put back in. And right now, I am hooking up the system to a vacuum so we can get ready to charge it. Now the wiring on this was fairly simple. It has a wire running to the compressor, it has a wire running to the dryer, it has a ground wire running from the blower motor to the firewall, and then there is an infuse wire running to a hot fuse link on the fuse box. So basically meaning hot on ignition. And don't worry, don't freak out. You will find one inside there, and I'll take a picture of which one we hooked up to, but there is several empty ports on the fuse box. They're either hot all the time or hot on ignition. We found the one through a test light that is hot on ignition, and I'll take a picture of that and show you where that one is. Next thing is to charge the AC and see if we can get it to run. So far so good. I'm at about 1 pound, and the pressures I have below 250. I don't want to exceed 250 at idle. Show you what I'm running on my temperatures inside. Looks to be doing pretty good. 50 degrees. You drive this a little bit more, I bet I get into about at speed down in the 40, 45 degrees, somewhere around there at, you know, beyond idle at actually running temperatures. Not bad. Thanks, George.
Thank you. This is a lifesaver.
Good deal.
Yeah.
Well, that's that. One more Scott tip for you, and that was I would route the hose that runs from the dryer to the expansion valve to the hole closest to the transmission tunnel that you drilled in the firewall. It'll give you a little bit more play in where you place that dryer. Overall, I'd give this kit a C as far as its installation goes. And due to all the installation inconsistencies and all the fabrication that we had to do to put this kit in, a C at the most. But it does work, and it is cold, so you have to give them that. Anyway, that's the end of that. You guys keep on keeping on, and we'll catch you next time.